hurts so good. Oh, baby, make it hurt so good. Sometimes I don't feel like it should, baby. Hurts so good. Hey, Nate and Chelsea here. We are back with the Bar Chord Masterclass, and this is where we start where the rubber meets the road.
Yeah, for sure. If you haven't created your complimentary account on guitarfam.com, go there and do that. You can go through the entire first module of the Bar Chord Masterclass there too.
Yeah, and so for this lesson, we are going to be talking about playing the actual bar itself first, because a lot of people really struggle with playing bar chords, and it's because they didn't take the time to build up the strength and technique to just play the bar on its own first.
Right, a lot of times people jump into like, oh, I want to play bar chords, so I'll play this entire E bar chord shape when they, like you said, they haven't taken the time to develop the strength, and they don't have the technique they need to just do this. And what we have to help you with this is something called the Clean Bar Checklist. It's just 8 quick tips on technique and on how to build technique and strength that are going to go a long way. And if you develop these first, don't skip over this. For the love of God, please don't skip over this. This really is the key, just working on your bar first. And we'll go through this list with you step by step, and then we'll go through a little mini practice session with you that covers the one and only exercise for this entire lesson.
So here's the Clean Bar Checklist, and you can follow along in the Bar Chord Masterclass ebook if you have a copy. And so the first one is to get your guitar set up, and we mentioned that in the intro, but we're mentioning it again because maybe you didn't think we were serious about it. We're serious. Get your guitar set up. It's the difference between you getting frustrated and quitting or becoming a much better guitar player.
It's literally the difference between life and death with bar chords. So. Okay, number 2 may seem very obvious because it's kind of the whole point of this entire video. Bar first on its own. That is number 2. Focus on creating just the bar on its own first. And that's what we're going to do throughout this lesson. If you can't do this, the reason for this is if you can't create a clean bar like this, there's no way you're going to create an entire bar chord like this. So breaking things down to the smallest components, just the bar, is exactly what we're going to do in this lesson. So that is your main focus and your goal for right now.
Number 3 is to put the bar on using a clamp-like motion with your thumb and index finger. So you'll place it on. Sometimes people will move their thumb, up or down the neck, but really they should be basically lined up. Okay, and then.
Yeah, it's a clean sounding bar, man.
Thank you.
Yeah. Number 4, once you have that bar on, is to place your bar right behind the fret. Not in the middle, like this, not toward the back, not on the fret, but you want it to be right, as close to right behind the fret as you possibly can. And it may look like my finger is actually on the fret, but it's not. It's right behind it. And we'll get into this a little bit. I don't want to give too much away here before we get to the next tip, but just keep that in mind. Right behind the fret will make it much easier to not get that buzzing sound like you will if you go to the middle or to the back of the fret. So as you work on the exercise when we get to it, just be sure that every time you go up and down the fretboard and change frets with your bar, that you're right behind the fret. And like Chelsea said, your thumb is right behind your index finger making that climb.
Number 5 is to experiment with the vertical placement of your finger, because we all have these darn creases. And so as we're experimenting with the vertical placement, then we can minimize the amount of buzzing or muting that happens. So let's see. Well, I guess that one worked. Let's see. I feel like it's hard.
Yeah, once you learn it, it's hard to not do it great. You're going to notice, like, if you watch your favorite guitar players play, some people are going to have a lot of their index finger hanging off the fretboard. And this has to do with your own natural physiology or biology or whatever of how your body's made. Some people have a lot of their finger hanging off because they have bigger hands, or because their creases are in a weird spot. Some people have almost none of their finger hanging off because their creases in a weird spot, or they have small fingers, right? Chelsea actually has long fingers.
Yeah.
They're very thin, but they're very long. I have very medium-sized hands. So it doesn't matter what size your hands are as you go through this and try to learn how to play bar chords. You can do it. It may be more challenging if you have small hands, or it may be weirder if you have large hands. It just really depends on your own personal situation and what you kind of have to do and manipulate and experiment with to make the most out of these tips that we're going to give you.
Number 6 is to tilt your finger so that the bony edge is what's contacting your fretboard rather than just the meaty kind of padded side.
Yep.
So I'll show the difference. If I'm just doing the meaty side of my fingers, see how it just doesn't work.
And that's a really good point. Like the trouble area on bar chords for most people is the G and B strings.
Yeah. So when I tilt it, then that goes away and I can actually have a clean sounding bar.
And this comes back to kind of tip number 4, kind of integrates with it. I said get your hand or your finger right behind the fret. And it may look like my finger is on the fret when I make a bar like this, but it's not, because what happens, if I were to come down on the very flat and meaty under part of my finger, the flat part, then it would be on the fret, but it's not. It's tilted back, so it gets off of the fret. And that's kind of what I was alluding to, where I didn't want to give away the next tip. But again, just to reiterate, finger right behind the fret, clamp, then tilt it back onto that edge of the finger right there. And you can even see where the strings are digging into my hand right there. Number 7, don't kink your wrist too far one way or the other. And by that, I mean when you're playing this bar, if you kink your wrist too far this way, it's going to start to hurt after a while. That's just the way it goes. So you want to avoid that. And you'll be reminded if you're doing that, trust me. The other way, if you kink your wrist this way, what's going to happen is it's going to be almost impossible for you to have enough leverage and enough pressure to get that bar to sound good. So what you want to shoot for is just a nice, relaxed, neutral position like you're holding a baseball or something, and then bring your hand up to the guitar and make the bar. And you can see that my wrist is slightly curved this way, but it's not kinked too far this way, and it's certainly not kinked like this. That's going to make it really hard to create the bar. So you want to go for natural position, not kinked too far one way or the other.
All right, number 8, we're on the last point of the clean bar checklist, and it is to not raise your elbow. Just let it fall by your side, okay? Just keep it relaxed.
Right.
If you have it up like this, that just doesn't work.
The number one thing that did when you raise your elbow up is your finger automatically pulled back to the back or the middle of the fret.
Yeah.
That's exactly what you don't want.
Yeah. And there's a lot of unneeded strain, like in your wrist and your shoulder and everything. Yeah. So prevent injury and make it way easier on yourself. Just let your elbow just fall by your side.
Right. And I know this is a lot of information, 8 tips, and it's going to take you a while to get through this to where they're second nature, but read this clean bar checklist. I have it sitting right here in front of me. Read through it several times until it starts to become second nature for you, and apply it to the exercise we're about to do, the one and only exercise in this lesson. And it's this right here. Put your bar on the 3rd fret, and that's where we're going to start. We're going to avoid the 1st and 2nd frets now, because the farther back you go, the harder it is. We'll get to that later. You'll get to where you can do that once you build some strength and technique. But put your bar on that 1st fret. And this is kind of the practice session for this video. So practice along as you're doing this. And this is how you want to practice this. Probably going to do this for 5 minutes. And this is exactly what you want to do while you're thinking about every tip on the checklist. So index finger, 3rd fret, right behind the fret. Tilt your finger back, elbow in. Don't kink your wrist too far one way or the other. Make sure your clamp is right there, thumb right behind the index finger, and check every single note. If you hear this, something like that, take it off, double check everything. And what happened there was I'm just not putting enough pressure down. And when I squeeze a little bit, then it clears up. If I had my finger towards the middle of the fret, it's subtle, but
it's still there.
Right behind the fret. And then you saw my elbow came in a little bit, squeezed in just a little. I'm not pulling it in, I'm just kind of flexing this muscle right here. And just going through all the tips. So that's exactly what you're gonna do. Check each string and make adjustments. And then once you have it clean, the exercise is to move up to the next fret. And what we're going to do is just go all the way up and down the fretboard. If you're on acoustic guitar, you probably want to stop around 9 or so because it gets really high or tough any farther past that. If you're on electric, like Chelsea.
Yeah, we've got the nice little cutaway. We'd suggest going up to maybe the 12th fret.
Yeah, exactly. But that's the entire exercise. After you've got that down and it's clean, then move on to the next one and do the exact same thing. Because it is going to feel different farther up the fretboard, too. So you have to kind of adjust accordingly. And if you hear something bad, just run through the checklist. If your guitar's set up, that's great. Work on creating the bar on its own. That's number 2. Number 3, put the bar on using a clamp-like motion. Number 4, finger right behind the fret. 5, experiment with the vertical finger placement. And this is probably going to be one of the bigger ones for you to getting a good sound out of your own guitar with your own personal unique features of your hand.
Yeah, the nice thing about that is that you develop muscle memory, so eventually your finger just falls where it's supposed to.
Right. When I do not think about this at all when I make a bar chord, and it's almost always in the exact same spot. So, number 6, tilt or lean your finger back. Number 7, don't kink your wrist, and then the elbow thing. Make sure your elbow is right beside your body. Check. If it needs adjustments, make adjustments, vertical finger placement, then move on to the next one.
Okay, and you're going to notice at the beginning of this bar chord journey that your hand is going to get tired really quick. And so it's okay if you can only practice, a few minutes, 5 minutes before your hand gets tired. Take a break, come back to it later in the day in an hour, and just have multiple practice times instead of sitting down for a whole hour trying to bang out all these exercises.
Right, so if you need to, take a break, shake your hand out, and just keep continuing up the fretboard.
Yeah, and if you need to do some
warm-ups,
wrist
stretches, things like that. Yeah.
Yep. And you can do that.
And you may think this is boring, but I'm telling you right now, and I'm just going to keep going up and as I talk to you about this, how much time you spend on this is going to be directly proportional to how much success you have with bar chords. It just is. So if you discount this and be like, I don't need to do this, you're going to jump right into bar chords, you're probably going to have trouble. It's going to take you longer. Just keep going up the fretboard with me as I talk about this. It's going to take you longer to get bar chords down, and it's going to be a lot more trouble when you start putting the whole shape on. But if you get this down and build the strength and technique now by going through the clean bar checklist, see, I got up to the 10th fret there, and I'm working my way back down. But if you build up the strength and technique with a bar chord checklist, and this may take, it may take you a few days, it may take you a few weeks, it may take you a month and a half or 2 months. It really depends on the individual. I've seen wildly different times that it takes people. But if you do this, what I'm doing right now, and go through the bar checklist, and again, stop at the 3rd fret. The 1st fret's going to be really tough while you're initially getting this down.
The dreaded F.
Going to be, yeah, except the dreaded F chord. But doing this is going to give you the strength and technique that you need to be able to play bar chords. And my hand is tired right now. I play guitar all the time and my hand is tired, so I need a break. Think about it. A typical song that Chelsea plays that I play with her is at the most 4.5 minutes long. And my hand is tired. So it takes time to build the stamina, but you can do it. And the more time you spend on this, the easier the rest of the Bar Chord Masterclass is going to be for you. So again, if you're on electric, just go up to 9, double check, make adjustments as you go, vertical finger placement right behind the fret. It's exactly how you want to practice this. Go all the way up, I'm about to hit 9, then work your way back down. And it's going to be tiring probably mostly right here. And this is hot right now.
Oh,
and
yeah?
this muscle on my left hand is twice the size of this muscle on my right hand. And I'm right-handed. So what does that tell you? It takes time to build that muscle up. It's just like going to the gym. Checking each string.
One thing we want to mention is that there is no shame in going down a string gauge. If you're struggling with this and you're like, oh my gosh, this is painful, then you can go down a string gauge and then use that as a stepping stone to then build up your strength, and then you'll be able to go back up a string gauge after you feel like you've mastered that.
Right. I have 12 gauge strings on this guitar. There's no shame in going down to what they call a custom light, which is 11s. And when you do that, you're probably going to need to have your guitar set up again. Chelsea plays 9s on her electric. I play 10s on my electric, sometimes 9.5s. But there's no shame in doing that. It's a really good stepping stone to, like she said, build your strength and get your technique in order before jumping all the way into bar chord shapes.
So that's it for this lesson. Let's get into your assignments. Number 1, read through the clean bar checklist several times. Number 2, apply the tips in the clean bar checklist to the exercise that moves the bar up and down the neck, like what Nate just did. And number 3, practice multiple times per day if possible. So this really is the keystone of being able to master bar chords. So make sure that you get this part down, this bar. And the key to doing that is to put in the time, put in that practice time. We suggest 4 to 6 days a week, 20 minutes a day. If you need to break up that 20 minutes into little 5-minute sessions, then that's totally fine. Do that. And if you have any questions, then you can contact us. You can either do that by just leaving a comment below if you're on YouTube, or if you're on the Guitar Fam website, you can leave a comment there or in our student forum.
Right, and you can also email us support@guitarfam.com. We'd be happy to get back to you that way. And if you need some extra help, if you're just struggling with something in particular, go to the Guitar Fam website and book a private lesson with me. The first one is complimentary, so there's no risk. I'd love to help you out and help you get on the road to getting these bar chords down.